everybody, and welcome to another Top 5 board gaming video. Today's video is very unique to me because of, well, several different reasons. First and foremost, I'm really not very familiar with this particular category. It's one that I don't actively stay away from, but it's very difficult for me to play games from this category. A lot of them are extremely complex. You have people that are extremely devoted to them, and the thing is, I have difficulty finding people to play with, and not only that, but a space that is large enough to accommodate the games themselves. I have discussed them a little bit in comments over the years, and just sort of mentioned like, it's not really my thing, don't really do that. I do have several of them, and I have played a decent number of them, so it is finally time for my top 5 war games of all time, the ones that I really enjoy. So let me get started by saying how I personally defined a war game for the purposes of this video. There are a couple of criteria that I use. The first thing and most important thing is that I stuck to games that use either 2 players or 2 teams of 2 or 3 players, typically 2 players. So essentially they're either 2-player or 4-player. You don't, if you've got like weird competitive multiplayerness, then for me it's not a war game. I mean, typically you have one side of the board just sort of charging at one another. That is essentially how I define a war game for the purposes of this video again. The other thing is that in general, I wanted to see some kind of a miniature, some sort of, like, whether it's plastic or cardboard or whatever it happens to be, something that you're moving around a map. And again, depending on how you guys define war games, this may not be part of it. But either way, for my purposes, these are the games that I have played that I personally consider to be war games. The other thing that I wanted is, we want unique aspects to those particular miniatures. We want something that sets them apart from others. We don't want just, like a whole bunch of the same little dude that goes off and does the same little dude thing. Now obviously a lot of war games have a bunch of the same miniature repeated over and over, and then you use them over and over, right? So this categorization eliminates a lot of some of my favorite games, so like Battle Line and the other like GNT 2-player games, because you're not really actively moving around, you're not using tactical positioning and stuff like that. So that eliminates those. And another one, some of my favorite games, Labyrinth and Twilight Struggle, are eliminated, even though obviously those are, strictly speaking, games about war, games of a war that you are facing off one person against the other. It's more political and intrigue and, like a little bit of give and take here and there and that kind of thing, as opposed to an active combative scenario. That's really what I was going for with this particular video. So with that definition clear for you guys, I hope that you enjoy this video. We're going to get started right off with my number 5. At number 5, we actually have the only game on the entire list that I personally own myself. And you can take that as it is. Again, I am not a person who is really big on war games, so I sort of mooch off of all the other people with them. But this is one that I saw and I really, really thought it would be a lot of fun, because thematically it is tremendously right up my alley and I absolutely love it. The game itself is Mythic Battles. So the reason that I love this game is because I am a huge fan of Greek mythology. I really, really enjoy it. I love the way that this game sort of set up different scenarios related to actual mythological events and things of that nature. It's really, really fun in that sense. You also have, obviously, terrain effects, line of sight, and all that kind of stuff. The reason that this is lower on the list is simply because it is not as fun as some of the other ones. It is not really unique in any way. It doesn't have anything that particularly stands out other than the theme itself, which again is great. It is an amazing theme and I absolutely love it because I'm a huge mythology buff, but at the same time it's a somewhat boring war game, for lack of a better term. But again, it is a good quality board game. You have decent balance between the different sides. You can play in team play, which I have never done, I will admit. I've only done 1v1 in this case. And I mean, it's a cool game. You get to fight with all the mythological creatures and as well as the regular human soldiers, yada yada, etc., etc., all that kind of stuff. A good game, but relatively cookie cutter in terms of the mechanics, so that's why it's lower on the list, even though, again, it is the only one that I own. Part of that also is because of the pricing. We'll get to talking about that later on. But either way, Mythic Battles, my number 5. Number 4 on this list is a relatively unique one in that it's actually augmented by technology. You may be familiar with it, Golem Arcana. The idea behind this game is that you have little soldiers that you place on the board and you scan them into an app, either on a smartphone or a tablet computer, whatever it happens to be, and then the computer or the phone or whatever actually tracks all of the stats for you. You don't have to worry about thinking about whether or not somebody can hit somebody else, how much damage is done, all that kind of stuff. That is all taken care of in the app. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, all of that kind of stuff. So it's really, really nice in that sense, and it's perfect for people like me who really don't play war games a whole lot, but still want that experience and want to be able to have that tactical movement and all of that kind of stuff. The reason that this is lower on the list is in part because I have had a tremendously difficult time finding anybody willing to play it. The biggest reason being it costs so much. This is a tremendously expensive game, so I don't see a lot of people who own it. I'm not going to go and buy it because I really don't think I'm ever going to get a chance to play it, unfortunately. As it stands, I have a difficult enough time playing a bunch of the games that I already own, much less something like Golem Arcana, where if somebody has heard of it, then again, it takes a couple of hours to play, but it is a fun game. It is a cool game. They did a good job with it. They've got multiple factions and all this kind of stuff. I think they did well with it, but it's just some of these other factors sort of mitigate the fun that I had when on the rare times I was able to play it. And another sort of generalized problem with war games is that you can have very, very one-sided battles. And obviously the problem with that is if it's one-sided, then the one person who's losing dramatically is probably not going to be having nearly as much fun as the person who's winning. And even the person who's winning probably isn't going to be having much fun because it's boring if you just simply win. It's just like, oh, okay, I guess, whatever, meh, sort of. But either way, Golem Arcana is my number 4. And number 2 is a game that I don't believe I have ever talked about at any time on my particular channel here, but it is one that I really enjoyed the few times that I've gotten to play it, and that is Mage Wars. Mage Wars is incredibly fun. You have like it's the most random thing that you could, well, it's not random, but the idea is that you actually have a spell book that's full of cards, and you take one of the cards and you play it, and it like summons the monster or whatever it happens to be. So while you're not strictly speaking moving around characters and features and stuff like that, you've got these cards that you're summoning down to the table, and it's a little bit reminiscent of Yu-Gi-Oh, honestly, like the anime itself where you put them down and then the physical manifestation pops up. It is that kind of thing, and it's just really cool, and you feel awesome like just flipping through this big spell book. It's a really interesting experience, and the great thing about it, there's so many expansions for it. You've got so many different mages that have very, very unique capabilities and characteristics, and the different spells and summons and all of this kind of stuff that they can have. It is a tremendously fun game, and I've always had a blast whenever I get the opportunity to play it. Again, one of the problems is, or the biggest problem with it for me, is just it's such a niche thing. That is the biggest issue with all of these games, is that it's so niche. Now, Mage Wars itself is actually much more reasonably priced compared to, say, Golem Arcana in the, like, just over $100. But Mage Wars is a lot more reasonable, about the same as pretty much any other game, but that lack of versatility is something that I sorely miss when I'm playing something like a war game. But again, as far as a unique gameplay experience, Mage Wars definitely takes a cake on that particular aspect, because it is tremendously fun and it has this very unique mechanic, and you really feel like you're this all-powerful mage just scrolling through your spell book like, how should I destroy you today? Yes, coins. And stuff like that. It's really, really fun. It's a great little game. Mage Wars, well, not little, but Mage Wars, my number 3. And number 2, I've got a game that I have talked about several times on my channel, and it is a World War II war game, because if you're talking about war games, you have to have something World War II related, right? This particular one is Memoir 44. That's right, Memoir 44, our old friend from Days of Wonder. The thing that I really, really enjoy about this game is the massive number of scenarios that you have available for it. We've got huge books published, like hardcover books, like really thick campaign books that go through pretty much the entirety of World War II. And you can play through the whole thing. One of the great things about the game as well is its simplicity. Again, just like with like Golem Arcana, how you've got the computer tracking all of the numbers and things, Memoir 44 just doesn't have a whole lot that you need to keep track of, so it's easier in that sense. It makes it a much easier game to play, but it is still a very well done, very good tactical war game, and at this point I really don't have an excuse not to own it, because it is a very reasonably priced game. But again, it's just the people. That tends to be the biggest problem with these games. I know I'm repeating myself, but suffice it to say, Memoir 44, it's a great World War II, I mean, I guess you could call it a simulation game, but because you've got the actual scenarios and the battles that occurred, and it's just a very well done war game, and it's what I immediately think of when I think of a war game. Memoir 44, my number 2. At number 1, I've got a game that I only recently had the privilege of playing, and it was absolutely incredible. The entire thing blew my mind. It is thematically amazing. It is incredibly fun to go and play through. You've got a lot of strategic decisions you've got to make. You've got to balance long-term strategy with short-term gains. You've got very, very distinct sides where one side has a completely different feel from playing the other side. The game itself is Star Wars Rebellion. This game has the two players playing as either the Empire or the Rebellion, obviously, and the idea is that the Empire, the Imperials, are trying to track down the Rebel base and destroy it, while at the same time the Rebellions are trying to make like strategic strikes on the Rebellion or on the Empire so that they can gain reputation, as it's called in the game. And it's very, very interesting because the idea is that you've got two markers on the timer. You've got sort of the Imperial one and then you've got the Rebel one. So when the Rebels increase their reputation, their marker goes down towards the Imperial one, and then the rounds just go up and up and up. And the reason that happens is because whenever the two meet, that is the end of the game. That's how it's designated. So if the Empire has not destroyed the Rebel base by then the Rebels win, but if they've destroyed it, then the Imperials win. Like I said, the two sides play drastically differently. You've got the Imperials who have this massive mechanistic advantage. They've got a ton of resources and logistics at their whim, as they say, whereas the Rebels are obviously all about like small targets, being able to move very, very quickly back and forth in between and all this kind of stuff. And so you've got a lot of like stirring up political turmoil and things of that nature from the Rebellion, whereas with the Imperials are just trying to hold everything with an iron fist type of thing. It is a tremendously fun game. You've got tactics cards that you're playing every turn. You've got leaders that you're tracking around, and you can use leaders in response to different cards it is amazing, absolutely an amazing game. But there are several major problems for this. The first thing is that it takes a long time. This is a very long game. When I first played it, it took us about 3 hours to get through a single game. The second thing is the cost. This game is still like $80 or $90 depending on where you go to get it, which sucks. It's just it's so frustrating because I would really love to have it, and I don't care that I would never get to play it. I just want all the cool little Star Destroyers and Super Star Destroyers. That's all I care about. But either way, point being that it is a really fun game. I have not done the team version. You can have teams where you've got 2 people playing the Imperials and 2 playing the Rebels. I've only done it 1 versus 1, but I played both sides, and it's absolutely amazing. It is a really well done game. It's surprisingly well balanced considering how different the 2 sides are, which I was really surprised by. The theme, like I said, is absolutely amazing. I love Star Wars. It's a great, great franchise, but it's a good franchise that has had some really great games, and it's had some really bad games. And for me, in my opinion, this is an example of something that they did extremely well and extremely correct in the context of the franchise itself. So with all of that, Star Wars Rebellion is my #1 war game. Well, folks, that's it for me. Those are my top 5 war games. I hope that you enjoyed this video. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is obviously not my forte. This is not something that I deal with every day or even every week or every month. And I mean, I might play a couple of war games a year, literally, like 3, maybe 4, simply because I don't get the people, I don't get the opportunity, I just don't. The stars do not align properly for me to play war games, but when I do get to sit down and play some of them, I really do enjoy myself, or I tend to at least. And like I said, you've got issues where if you've got somebody who's really good, then they can completely crush the other player very quickly, and it's just not very fun. You've also got the things with the pure definition. How do you guys define war games? Would you consider something like Twilight Struggle to be a war game? Because I was really on the border with it. I wasn't certain if I should, and then I went with, like we have a board, we've got tactics, we've got, in some way we're moving around and doing things. So Twilight Struggle is just right on the cusp there, but I didn't include it. So I'm just curious, what do you guys think? Again, this is something that's relatively out of my element, so I'm extremely curious what you guys have to say. What are your favorite board games or your favorite war games? How do you define a war game? Would you consider Battle Line to be a war game? All of this kind of stuff. But either way, with that, thank you so very much for watching this. As always, put any and all thoughts into the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. And with that, I will see you next time. Thank you so much again, everyone, for watching my video for my top 5 favorite war games. As I mentioned throughout this video, it's not really my forte. These games are not ones that I get to play very frequently, and I don't know a whole lot about the genre. So I would absolutely love to hear what you guys have to say. What are some of your favorite war games? Do you personally enjoy the genre? What do you think of the ones that I personally picked? Are those like big and awesome war games, or are they sort of like lower ones? On top of that, how do you define a war game itself? Would you consider Twilight Struggle to be one? All this kind of stuff. Please put anything and everything in the comments below. Thank you so much again for watching this video. As always, I've got several of my playlists linked up at the top of the page so you can see some more of my work, and please click on that big giant subscribe button if you want to see more of me in the future. With that, thank you again, and I will see you next time.